The lights were dim. Soft jazz music played in the background as waiters moved quietly between tables. Everything about the restaurant whispered wealth and elegance. Lena sat across from her husband, Michael. She wore a simple but elegant dress. Black, just like the coffee she'd stopped drinking since the headaches began. Her hands rested neatly on her lap, a faint smile on her lips. She thought tonight might be different. Maybe, after weeks of silence and cold shoulders, Michael wanted to talk. Maybe he wanted to fix things. Michael, in his perfectly tailored suit, tapped his fingers on the table. His face was calm, but his eyes held something cold. He picked up his wineglass and looked at Lena, almost amused. "You're a loser, Lena," he said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "You've held me back long enough." Lena blinked. The words didn't make sense at first. Her smile faded. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Michael reached into his briefcase and pulled out a white envelope. He slid it across the table like it was just another business deal. "Divorce papers," he said. "It's done." Her heart dropped. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She looked around, hoping this was a dream or a cruel joke. But the stares from other diners, the silence that suddenly fell across the room, told her it was all real. Then came the final blow. "Kylie and I are going to Paris next month," he added with a proud smirk, lifting his wineglass in a toast. "She deserves better." Kylie, the young paralegal from his office, 20-something, always smiling, always watching him like he was a king. Lena's hands began to shake. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Not here, not in front of strangers. She stood slowly, pushing her chair back. Her heels echoed on the marble floor like gunshots. Each step away from the table felt heavier than the last. She didn't say a word, didn't look back. As the restaurant returned to life behind her, laughter and music rising again, Lena stepped outside into the night, alone, heartbroken, and suddenly unsure of who she even was anymore. Lena sat alone in her small apartment, the smell of old paint and dust lingering in the corners. A single canvas stood in the corner, half finished, covered by a thin sheet to keep the memories quiet. She hadn't painted in years, not seriously, not since Jessica was born. Once, she was full of colour. Her life had been about art, bold strokes, wild ideas, messy fingers. She was the kind of person who saw beauty in cracks on a sidewalk, or the way light hit a window just right. But that version of Lena had slowly disappeared. She had given it all up, first for love, then for family. Michael wanted to become a lawyer, and Lena believed in him. She worked 2 jobs to help pay for his classes. She stayed up late editing his essays, comforting him when he doubted himself. When Jessica came along, she put her brushes down for good. A mother's role, she thought, a wife's duty. At first, Michael was kind, grateful. He used to say she was his reason for everything, but somewhere along the way, he changed. As his career grew, so did his ego. He started talking down to her, started using words like real work and serious ambition. He told her she was too soft, too emotional. He laughed at her paintings when she tried to return to them. He made her feel small, like she wasn't enough. It didn't happen all at once. It came slowly, like rust, quiet, steady, and cruel. By the time she realized how deeply it had eaten through her, she could hardly remember who she was before him. Jessica was her bright spot, smart, strong, with her father's drive and her mother's heart. She was in her final year of law school now. Lena was proud, so proud, but the tuition was paid by Michael. That made everything complicated. Jessica loved her mother, but she needed her father's money, and Michael knew it. Lena didn't ask for help. She took a job as a substitute teacher, barely scraping by. Her apartment was small but neat. She kept her fridge full of cheap food and her walls bare. The only personal touch was a single painting, one she had done long ago before life got so heavy. It showed a woman sitting under a tree, her face turned away, the sky above her breaking into colour. Every night, Lena lay awake wondering if her silence had made things worse. If maybe, just maybe, she'd fought harder for herself, for her art, for her voice, things would be different now. Meanwhile, Michael played the role of the powerful man perfectly. Sharp suits, slick words, dinners in penthouses. His new life with Kylie was all over social media, laughing selfies in Santorini, matching pajamas at Christmas, love of my life captions that felt like knives. To the world, they looked perfect, but Lena had known Michael long enough to spot the cracks. He never stayed happy for long. His compliments always had sharp edges. He needed control, praise, attention. Kylie would learn that soon enough. Lena didn't hate her. The girl was young, probably caught in a dream she hadn't seen through yet. But Lena did hate the part of herself that once needed Michael's approval. That part of her still whispered sometimes, still asked if maybe she was too plain, too quiet, too much of a loser. She stared at her hands now, fingers once stained with paint, now dry and clean, safe, empty. There was a knock at the door, a delivery, nothing important. Still, the moment lingered. She thought about how many days passed like this, quiet, tidy, without colour. She walked over to the covered canvas and slowly pulled back the sheet. Dust floated in the air. The painting beneath was rough and unfinished, but something in it stirred her. A woman standing on a cliff, the wind pushing her forward. No path behind her, only the sky ahead. Lena touched the brush beside it. She wasn't ready yet, but maybe soon. Lena was washing dishes when the phone rang. The sound startled her. It was late, and she wasn't expecting anyone. She dried her hands quickly and picked it up. It was Jessica's roommate, her voice shaking. She collapsed. At school, they think it's stress, or something more. She's at Mercy General. Lena's heart stopped. She didn't even ask questions. She just grabbed her coat and ran out the door, keys shaking in her hand as she tried to start the car. When she got to the hospital, the waiting room lights were too bright, the walls too quiet. She asked for Jessica and was told she could go in. Jessica lay in a hospital bed, pale and weak, a monitor beeping softly beside her. Her eyes were closed, but her chest rose and fell. Lena sat beside her, gently took her hand, and whispered her name. A few minutes later, Michael arrived. His hair was perfect. His jacket probably cost more than Lena's monthly rent. He looked like he belonged in a magazine, not in a hospital room with his sick daughter. He glanced at Jessica, then turned to Lena. "What happened?" he asked, calm but sharp. "She passed out. They think it's exhaustion," Lena said. "Too much pressure. She's been dealing with everything." Michael frowned but said nothing. He stepped toward Jessica. She opened her eyes slowly and saw him. Then her face changed, hurt, anger. "Don't," she said, voice hoarse. "Don't act like you care." Michael froze. "Jessica, No." Her voice was stronger now. "You chose her. You discarded Mum like trash. You broke us." Michael looked stunned. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Jessica turned her head away. Lena watched the moment like it was a movie she couldn't pause. She wanted to cry, wanted to scream, but she didn't. She just sat still, holding Jessica's hand, feeling something shift deep inside her. That night, when she returned home, Lena didn't sleep. She sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from her. All those years, all that loyalty, all the lies. And now, their daughter was falling apart. Something cracked open inside her. The next morning, she walked into a lawyer's office downtown. A woman named Elise met her with tired eyes and a kind smile. "Let's talk," Lena said. "I need to know what I gave up, what he took." They went over the divorce agreement. Elise read in silence, her expression darkening with every page. "There's no alimony," she said finally. "No shared property. You signed over everything." Lena's stomach turned. "He said I didn't need it, that he'd help me anyway." "He cleaned you out," Elise said. "This wasn't just a breakup, it was a setup." Lena felt like the room was spinning, but under the panic, something stronger began to grow. Rage, not the loud kind, not the kind that screams. This was quiet, steady, like fire crawling through dry grass ready to burn. Michael thought she was weak. He thought she would stay small. He thought she would disappear. But he had forgotten one thing. Lena was still here. Lena sat across from Elise in the small office, the smell of stale coffee and printer ink filling the air. Papers were spread out in front of them. Bank records, emails, signatures. Her hands were steady as she signed the complaint. A civil lawsuit against Michael. Fraud. Financial deception during the divorce. Elise looked at her carefully. "Lena, you're brave to do this, but you should know. He's protected. He's been covering his tracks for years. He has connections, money, power. This won't be easy." "I know," Lena said, her voice calm. "But it's time someone told the truth." That night, back home, Lena pulled out the old box she had hidden in her closet. Inside were her brushes, dusty but still good, and a few blank canvases she'd saved for someday. She didn't wait. She set one on the easel and let her hands move. Days passed, then weeks. She painted every night. Her emotions poured out. Rage, betrayal, grief. The colors were loud, The shapes were messy, but it felt honest. She didn't want anyone to know it was her, so she created an anonymous online profile and uploaded one piece. A woman drowning in a glass of red wine, while hands reached out of the shadows to pull her under. It went viral in 2 days. People from all over the country messaged the account, women mostly. Some said the art made them cry. Others said it helped them leave toxic marriages. Some just said, "Thank you." Lena kept painting, each piece more raw than the last. She didn't tell anyone, not even Jessica. Meanwhile, Michael's life was beginning to shift. On the outside, things still looked perfect. He and Kylie went to events, smiled for cameras, shared polished videos on social media. But inside their home, things weren't as pretty. Kylie wasn't what Michael had expected. At first, she was sweet, agreeable, but that didn't last. She wanted more money, more fame, more say. She didn't want to be a trophy. She wanted to be the boss. They fought behind closed doors. Kylie questioned him about money, about the lawsuit Lena had filed. Michael brushed her off, but he couldn't hide the tension. The lawsuit had opened doors he thought were locked. A former client stepped forward, accusing Michael of unethical conduct, of pushing him into a bad deal to protect a friend. It didn't take long for whispers to spread. Then, Jessica moved back in with Lena. At first, it was awkward. Jessica had always been close with her father, had relied on his support, his pride. But now she saw things differently. She saw the woman her mother had been forced to become, the silence, the sacrifice, the strength beneath the wounds. They shared quiet dinners. Slowly, the space between them began to close. One rainy evening, Jessica opened a storage box while looking for an old school photo. Inside, under some papers, she found a painting. An older one, faded but powerful. A woman standing alone in a storm, arms stretched to the sky, as rain fell in colors instead of water. It stopped her breath. She took a photo and posted it online. "My mom painted this years ago. She never showed anyone. I think it's time people see it." The post went viral within hours. Thousands of likes, comments, shares. People connected the style to the anonymous online profile, the one already gaining attention. And now they had a face, a name, Lena Walters. Lena woke up to her phone buzzing non-stop. Elise called. "Lena, your story's out. It's everywhere." She opened her inbox. Requests from reporters, messages from survivors, invitations to speak at galleries. At first she panicked, but then she saw the comments, the outpouring of love, support, strength. It wasn't just about the art, it was about what the art meant. Women who had been silenced, stepped on, erased. They saw themselves in her. She had become a symbol, not on purpose, but because she had lived through something real and dared to show it. Michael saw the post too. He watched from his desk, jaw clenched. The world he'd built was beginning to crack. He had traded Lena for a younger, shinier life, but now the woman he'd called a loser was being celebrated, respected, even admired. And for the first time in years, Michael felt something he didn't expect: fear. Michael sat alone in his office, the walls feeling tighter than usual. The blinds were closed, his phone silent. The emails had stopped. No meetings, no clients, no more power. His law firm had suspended him that morning. The news had spread fast. His name was all over legal blogs and social media. Unethical practices, hidden accounts, lawsuit pending. He had tried to explain, tried to blame others, but no one cared anymore. He wasn't the rising star. He was the man who fell too hard, too fast. Then Kylie left. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She packed her things calmly, looked him in the eye, and said, "You lied to me. You lied to everyone." She was pregnant. She didn't need him. A week later, Michael received the papers. Child support claim, demand for full custody. She'd already hired a lawyer, and Lena's lawsuit was moving fast. Forensic accountants had gone through his finances. They found everything: hidden money, backdoor deals, missing funds. Things he thought he had buried deep were now being used against him. A court date was set. On the day of the trial, the courtroom was quiet but full. Reporters sat in the back, notebooks ready. Michael adjusted his tie, looking older, heavier. He avoided the cameras. His hands shook slightly. Lena walked in calmly, dressed in a dark blue suit. Her face was steady. She didn't look at him. She walked straight to her seat, her daughter by her side. Jessica didn't glance his way. When it was Lena's turn to speak, She took the stand and faced the room. Her voice was soft but clear. "I gave him everything," she said. "I supported him when we had nothing. I worked nights. I gave up my dreams. I stayed quiet when he made me feel small." The room was still. "For 20 years, I was invisible in my own marriage. I carried him while he sharpened the knife he later used on me." Her eyes didn't leave the judge. "I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to be treated like I mattered." There was silence when she finished. Not a single sound. The judge took a deep breath and spoke. "After reviewing the evidence and testimony, the court finds in favor of partial restitution. Mr. Walters is ordered to pay back the withheld assets. This is not full justice, but it is a step toward it." Michael sat frozen, his jaw clenched. He didn't argue. He turned to Jessica, hoping for a look, a sign, anything. She didn't meet his eyes. She stood and walked out with her mother. Michael stayed behind, surrounded by people but completely alone. Michael sat alone in his office, the walls feeling tighter than usual. The blinds were closed, his phone silent. The emails had stopped. No meetings, no clients, no more power. His law firm had suspended him that morning. The news had spread fast. His name was all over legal blogs and social media. Unethical practices, hidden accounts, lawsuit pending. He had tried to explain, tried to blame others, but no one cared anymore. He wasn't the rising star. He was the man who fell too hard, too fast. Then Kylie left. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She packed her things calmly, looked him in the eye and said, "You lied to me. You lied to everyone." She was pregnant. She didn't need him. A week later, Michael received the papers. Child support claim, demand for full custody. She'd already hired a lawyer, and Lena's lawsuit was moving fast. Forensic accountants had gone through his finances. They found everything: hidden money, backdoor deals, missing funds. Things he thought he had buried deep were now being used against him. A court date was set. On the day of the trial, the courtroom was quiet but full. Reporters sat in the back, notebooks ready. Michael adjusted his tie, looking older, heavier. He avoided the cameras. His hands shook slightly. Lena walked in calmly, dressed in a dark blue suit. Her face was steady. She didn't look at him. She walked straight to her seat, her daughter by her side. Jessica didn't glance his way. When it was Lena's turn to speak, she took the stand and faced the room. Her voice was soft but clear. "I gave him everything," she said. "I supported him when we had nothing. I worked nights. I gave up my dreams. I stayed quiet when he made me feel small." The room was still. "For 20 years, I was invisible in my own marriage. I carried him while he sharpened the knife he later used on me." Her eyes didn't leave the judge. "I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to be treated like I mattered." There was silence when she finished. Not a single sound. The judge took a deep breath and spoke. "After reviewing the evidence and testimony, the court finds in favor of partial restitution. Mr. Walters is ordered to pay back the withheld assets. This is not full justice, but it is a step toward it." Michael sat frozen, his jaw clenched. He didn't argue. He turned to Jessica, hoping for a look, a sign, anything. She didn't meet his eyes. She stood and walked out with her mother. Michael stayed behind, surrounded by people but completely alone. The room was full of soft music and quiet laughter. It was the closing night of Lena's gallery show. A whole year had passed since the first night leftovers opened. Now, every piece had found a home. Every story had been heard. Lena stood near the front window, a glass of red wine in her hand. She looked around slowly, taking it all in. The lights, the people, the warmth in the air. She had been so scared once. Now, she felt something different. Peace. Behind her, arms wrapped around her waist in a tight, warm hug. "You did it, Mom," Jessica said softly. Lena turned and looked at her daughter. Jessica's eyes were shining, her smile wide and real. Lena smiled back, and this time, the tears in her eyes didn't come from sadness. They came from pride, from everything they had been through, from everything she had become. Outside, the crowd clapped and cheered for her one last time. The sound drifted through the glass like a breeze. Lena took a breath, a long, full one. She looked toward the far wall where one final painting still hung. It was called Aftermath. It showed a woman standing in the middle of a broken field, flowers growing from cracks in the earth, the sky slowly turning light. She walked toward it slowly, her heels clicking on the gallery floor. As she passed by the last of the guests, She whispered to herself, voice steady and sure. Maybe I was a loser to him, but I found the version of me he never deserved. She stopped in front of the painting, her reflection faint in the glass, and then she smiled, fade out. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Bye.